Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit to another video, and today we're going to be continuing our What If Tanjiro Had Venom, Demon Slayer, Dark Fury series as we get into part 5. Now, as always, before we get into any video, I do want to say thank you to everyone who supports Power Core Productions and Podcastings. As always, I cannot do it without you. You make the channel grow, you make the core grow. As I said in yesterday's video, I just want to let you guys know ahead of time that next week we are going to be having a bit of a layoff week. This week, we're going to be taking time to wrap up some series that we're doing on the channel as a whole. This one, it's not quite finished yet, so we're going to be continuing on with this. But some series such as One Piece Rangers of the Sea, the Enies Lobby arc is going to be coming to an end this week. And we're going to be doing What If Spider-Man Was in ReZero, the movie No Way Home. That's going to be coming out on Friday, so stay tuned for that as well. Now, next week's videos are being prepared ahead of time simply because next week I'm going to be taking the week off. So next week there aren't going to be story-based videos. There are going to be things like What If One Shot and some discussion videos, but they're just, more so for entertainment, nothing heavy-based story. Although the one thing that I will do is I will record the final video for What If Tanjiro Had Venom. That will be part 6, which will wrap up season 1 of Demon Slayer, so that when we do come back with the regular stories on a weekly basis, which will be the week after next week, we will get into the What If Tanjiro Had Venom, Demon Slayer, the movie Mugen Train. So I do hope you'll stay tuned for that as well. So the only story that you're going to be getting next week, like a major fanfic crossover story that I usually do on this channel, is going to be What If Tanjiro Had Venom. But other than that, we're just going to be doing some lighthearted discussion videos, what if one shots, and again, all these videos are being currently prepared ahead of time because next week I am taking the week off. You'll still have uploads, but I'm just going to be off, so they're already being put out ahead of time. So stay tuned for that and everything else that has to come on Power Core Productions and Podcastings. But anyway, without further ado, and it's done keeping you here for too long, let's get into today's video. So, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Once their wounds were healed, the Kasugai Crow would arrive, telling the 3 young demon slayers of their next journey. They were told to head to the north-northwest, where Mount Natagumo would be, in relation to where another demon would have appeared. Once they had received their clothes and bid the innkeepers farewell, they would set out on their journey. All the while, Zenitsu was rather enamored with Nezuko, constantly poking and prodding at the box where she slept. Venom a few times became rather annoyed with Zenitsu, his face appearing in front of the box, warning him that Nezuko was resting, and that if he continued to annoy her, he was going to shut his mouth closed permanently. Inosuke was rather impressed by Venom, thinking that he were a sort of a kindred spirit, and Tanjiro in the meanwhile simply tried to keep them all under control, until they eventually arrived to the base of the mountain, as the sun started to set and nightfall started to fall upon them. As they made their way, Tanjiro could smell something in the distance, the smell of blood. He knew that he had to go in immediately, and he would take off without hesitation, with Inosuke not too far behind. Zenitsu in the meanwhile wasn't sure if he should go or not, his cowardice getting the best of him, forcing him to stay behind as he contemplated his decisions. In the meantime, once Tanjiro and Inosuke had arrived inside of the forest, they would come across another demon slayer, a young man named Murata. The young man would explain that he came in along with 10 other high-ranked demon slayers, but when they arrived to the mountain, for some inexplicable reason, they started killing and slicing away at one another. They had no way of knowing what was to happen, and he was only barely able to escape. Little did Tanjiro know that the situation had become a lot more dire than he was expecting, as another Kusugai crow, which had been exhausted, had somehow managed to arrive to the lap of the Demon Slayer's commander. It would take note and would give the message that one of the 12 Kizuki may be there. In response, Giyu as well as Shinobu were sent as backup to the mountain. In the meantime, Zenitsu, still sitting on the path, was debating whether or not if he should move forward with the others or cower away in fear. However, there was one key note that made his decision to run into the mountain forest very clear, and that was the knowledge that Tanjiro had his precious Nezuko. And in a flash, he found himself racing inside of the Spider Mountain. As Tanjiro and Inosuke made their way deeper into the forest area, they would come across the other captured demon slayers, who were walking about among the trees, and they started to attack Tanjiro without warning. Thanks to Venom and his improved eyesight, he was able to not only smell, but see the threads that were attached to them. It was easy to see that they were being controlled like puppets on a string. Venom would quickly coat Tanjiro in the Venom Oni symbiote. Once doing so, he would shoot out his own little tendril webs, slicing through at the spider-like webs that were controlling the demon slayers. As they turned, they would eventually see a white-haired demon boy suddenly appear above him, standing on threads. He would simply say that Mother was going to kill them before leaving. In doing so, he would quickly leave, remarking to himself that once again, he would have his happy family. Tanjiro and Inosuke would check to make sure the other Demon Slayer Corps members were alright. In just a split second, Tanjiro would sense that more webs were coming. He quickly grabbed all of the other Demon Slayer Corps members and rushed them out immediately, before any of them could be taken. As he turned back to Inosuke, he would ask him if he were going to be coming back along, but Inosuke was too busy. As he used his own beast breathing, he was able to smell another one of the demons in the distance, and without warning, he would rush and head straight towards the enemy. Tanjiro, in the meantime, would rush back out to the main entrance of the mountain. Thankfully, with his increased speed and strength, and using the tendrils to hold on to the other Demon Slayer Corps members, he was able to carry them all out of the mountain area and into safety. But just as he was coming out, Zenitsu was rushing back in. He grabbed onto Tanjiro, yelling and demanding for Nezuko's presence. Tanjiro wasn't really in the mood for his games, but Venom would snap out of it rather quickly. Creating an extra arm, he would punch Zenitsu in the face, slamming him into the ground and telling him that now wasn't the time to act like a hormonal jackass. The other Demon Slayer Corps members were completely mesmerized. They had no idea that they had a member of the Corps who's so young and rather so new, who had that kind of strength. Whatever his powers were, they weren't of demon descent, but they weren't human either. Back in the forest, though, the demon known as Mother was now worried. She had let her prey get away. And now, the youngest of them, the young man known as Ryu, would appear behind her, telling her that she better hurry and finish her job, or else he would tell Father. The female demon would become terrified at this news, begging him not to tell Father. With no choice, the mother would take control of whatever dead corpses that remained and began her hunt. One of the other Demon Slayer Corps members, Ozaki, a young girl, would thank Tanjiro for his help, but Tanjiro would tell her that they weren't out of it just yet. For as he turned back to face the forest, he could see the corpses heading towards him. Tanjiro was absolutely sickened at what he saw. The idea of using dead bodies as weapons, it was something that truly disturbed him. But he knew that now wasn't the time to be worried about such things. Now was the time to take action. He would engage the corpses in battle, dealing with them quickly and swiftly. Knowing that he was on his own, he had to do his best to protect the others. He could see where the mother demon was, seeing how she was able to control her body-like corpses from a distance. He knew he had to close the gap if he was ever going to go in for the finishing strike. And in doing so, he decided that a combination attack would be in order. He would first use water breathing, first form, water surface slash, in combination with venom breathing, third form, frenzy strike. Moving like a black blur in the night, his sword would move in the swift swing motion, slicing through all of the threads, until eventually all of the corpses had been freed. Now, with nowhere to run, Tanjiro would appear behind the mother, faster than what she was expecting. However, in the briefest of moments, the two of them would lock eyes with one another. Tanjiro could see within her eyes. He saw the pain, the regret, the hurt that she was feeling. Even Venom was taken aback for a moment as he didn't sense any killing intent from her. He didn't sense any form of struggle, no. Venom, as well as Tanjiro, were quickly able to deduce that she wanted this death. Whatever she was going through, whatever decisions had brought her to this moment, she knew better than to go back to her old life, knowing that she would be killed either way. She welcomed this death, and with a heavy heart, Tanjiro wished to bring the fight to an end as quickly as possible. He would use water breathing, fifth form, blessed rain after the drought, beheading her quickly with no pain. The mother was grateful for her quick and painless death, and as thanks for giving her such a gift, she would warn Tanjiro that one of the 12 Kizuki were on the mountain. In the meantime, in the midst of all the fighting and the confusion, Zenitsu found himself running and fleeing inside of the forest. Seeing all of the spires around him, he couldn't help but feel immensely afraid. However, his situation only got worse, as before he knew it, he would find himself in one of the demon's spire nests. He would come into conflict with the one known as the Elder Son, whose venom turned humans into spiders. Worse than that, it would be revealed that Zenitsu had inexplicably been bitten, and that he would turn into a spider demon in less than 30 minutes, causing Zenitsu to run and hide in fear. During his panic, he would remember to his days training under his master, Jigoro, the man who had paid off his debt and in return made him his apprentice. He remembered being absolutely the worst when it came to sword fighting. In fact, he was so inept that he inexplicably got himself struck by lightning one day. That resulted in him having the blonde hair that he had today. He was the worst of the worst, and he constantly viewed himself as pathetic, Even the others who were trained under his master viewed him as such, believing he was unworthy to be trained by such a swordsman. In fact, Zenitsu was so terrible that he was only able to learn one attack. That was Thunder Breathing First Form, Thunderclap and Flash, sixfold. However, despite his inadequacies, his master always stood up for him, telling him that it was okay if he only knew one technique. It was just important that he learned it really well, instilling in him a sense of self-worth and of confidence. As the poison slowly started to take effect over Zenitsu, slowly making him cough up more blood, he could feel himself beginning to change instantly. Knowing that he wouldn't have much time, he felt as though this were going to be the end, causing him to slowly black out. However, as he did so, and as had happened time and time again, whenever he fell unconscious, it was as if his inner beast would awaken. With his eyes closed, and with his hand on his sword's hilt, as he came face to face with the spider demon, he would close his eyes and take a deep breath as he muttered the words, Thunder Breathing First Form, Thunderclap and Flash sixfold. Moving faster than the speed of light, a yellow flash would blur through, slicing the demon before it had a chance to react. Once his sword was quickly sheathed, he would awaken, but feel the crippling pain of the poison moving through him. Though scared, Zenitsu would focus on his breathing technique, knowing that if he slowed it down just enough, then the poison would be slowed to move it within him. It would buy him some time, but how much, he wasn't entirely sure. Meanwhile, Tanjiro could hear Zenitsu's attack, and had decided he was going to head his way. However, just as he was about to do so, he had caught up with Inosuke, who had been caught up in chasing after one of the demons he had come across, the one known as the daughter of the spider family. However, he had quickly come to realize that he had actually been lured into a trap, for once the spider demon daughter had safely gotten into position, she called out to her father, and the father demon would then appear to come to the aid of his daughter. The larger, bulkier demon, forcing his attack and pressing the two to retreat even further, putting them on the defensive. Meanwhile, back at the base of the mountain, Giyu and Shinobu would arrive for backup. They would see the other demon slayers who had been saved, and they would ask them what had happened. The young man would tell them of the 3 demon slayers who had arrived. He would tell them of one in particular and his strange abilities. Giyu instantly recognized that the person he was speaking about was none other than Tanjiro. He was pleased to learn that he had actually survived and that he had made it this far. But now knowing what he was up against, he knew he needed to back him up. The two would split up to cover more grounds as they headed into the mountain. Meanwhile, Tanjiro and Inosuke's blades would barely be able to scratch the father demon. Tanjiro knew that if he were going to win, then he was going to need to increase his strength as best he could. He would take a deep breath before going into his next form. He would use Venom Breathing 5th Form, the double critical. Venom would warn him that this would be a major drawback, reminding him of the 3-minute time limit. He would have to make the most of it. Tanjiro would agree. As he took a deep breath, Venom would begin to fill Tanjiro's lungs with the symbiote. The symbiote would work to hold all of the air in place. This form was rather unconventional. It was a bit of a super form, a form where one's breathing was brought to its highest level of degree. Of course, all of this was in help of the symbiote, but again, there was only so much that it could do for a human body, thus the 3-minute time limit. But in this time limit, Tanjiro's strength, speed, agility, stamina, all of his attributes would be filled to the max. However, the drawback would be deadly. For this 3 minutes of superior strength and power would instantly be taken away. For the moment that the form was ended, he would be put in a state of which he was unable to remain focused for too long. Similar to the primary lotus, if you will. This move was more of a double-edged sword than anything else. However, it was a move that he had to take. Using the venom-breathing 5th form double critical, increasing himself to the absolute max, he would tell Inosuke to back him up, as the two of them were going to unleash a massive barrage of attack. Inosuke would agree, officially pumped up to take out the demon. He would call upon his beast-breathing 3rd fang, Devour. As he went forward doing so, he would combine it with his 2nd beast-breathing 1st fang, Pierce. The double attack, creating an opening through the father demon, allowing for Tanjiro to deliver the finishing strike. Using the double critical to increase his already strengthened body, he would combine it with water-breathing 2nd form, improved lateral water wheel. In doing so, he would push his sword forward, slicing through the father completely in half, causing his death to be instant. However, the force at which Tanjiro was moving was too much for him to take, causing him to rocket through the forested area, as he would eventually find himself landing over near the riverside, far off from where his fight had commenced. He would look up slowly to see the other demon who had left, the one known as Ryu. Tanjiro could see that he was torturing his younger sister, hearing her screams. When he heard this filled Tanjiro with a unique sense of anger. He would demand to know why the demon was hurting his family. However, Ryu would state that it was a business between him and his sister, a family affair that didn't concern him. However, Tanjiro's blood would only begin to boil even further. For he valued bonds, the bond between family, the bond that he had with his sister, the bond that drew him forward. That was such a bond that could not easily be broken. And to see someone make light of such a bond, well, that was something that Tanjiro could not tolerate. In the meantime, Zenitsu would have slowed down the poison, but he could feel that it was slowly taking over him even more. However, thankfully, Shinobu would arrive just in time, landing beside him. Seeing the situation he was in, she would make light of the situation, not filling Zenitsu with much confidence, but she assured him that there was a way to save him. Of course, he had to be prepared for the worst in the meantime. As for Inosuke, well, thankfully they had taken out the father demon, but he was far off from where everyone else was, and he had no idea what he was doing. Although thankfully there were some random demons nearby, so he decided that he would just clear the area and give everybody else some time. As Giyu would make his way through the forest, he would soon come across Inosuke, who was wrapping things up with a few other stray demons. Giyu would be impressed with Inosuke, and Inosuke would instantly want to challenge him to a fight, telling him that he helped defeat one of the 12 Kizuki. However, Giyu would quickly see the corpse of the father demon and would tell him that that was indeed not one of the 12 Kizuki. Giyu, feeling that this one needed a bit more help in the intelligence department, Inosuke, in the meantime, felt as though he were being undermined and challenged Giyu instantly. Giyu would effortlessly dodge his attacks before tying him up and hanging him to a tree, telling him to stay put and that he would send others to come back for him soon enough. In the meantime, Tanjiro would continue on in this fight, coming face to face with Ryu. However, Tanjiro was in no real position to do much except defend. The double critical had taken a lot out of him, more so than he was expecting. It took Venom acting as a bit of a controller to keep his body afloat, to keep him from being absolutely devastated. The power he was using at the moment was not his own, but it was solely Venom. But even for Venom, there was only but so much that he could do, really. Granted, if he wanted to, he could just take over Tanjiro's body and go into his complete bulk form and absolutely wreck everything around him, but he had to be mindful of Tanjiro and Nezuko in this situation. And while he had become adept at learning Tanjiro's sword fighting style, it was no more than doing the basic maneuvers, autopilot, so to speak. Although thankfully, the tendrils of the symbiote proved to be very effective in moving and maneuvering through the trees and dodging various strikes. In fact, as they continued their fight, Venom became more enamored with the spider demon and his abilities. Instead of just creating tendrils, he started to make webbing of his own, thinking that if a person could swing from web to web, that could be rather effective. As the fight slowly progressed, on Tanjiro's Venom hybrid suit, underneath his clothing, an insignia would start to appear. It would be that of the spider. As the fight pressed on now, the spider demon would show his true power, his threads being very effective, even slicing through some of the symbiote and cutting Tanjiro a few times. In a few brief moments, it seemed as though he were going to get the upper hand, but before he could do so, Nezuko would instantly jump from her box, moving and protecting Tanjiro and Venom as well. Tanjiro could feel deep inside his body felt as if it were on fire. Every fiber, every muscle, every time he moved, it felt like it were immense pain, as if he were being stabbed by fiery pen needles 1,000 times over. Just drawing a breath was taking a lot out of him. He almost didn't want to breathe, but he knew he had to. His lungs, they felt as though they had been dipped in fiery coals. There was just no way of getting past his pain, but he knew that no matter what, he needed to persevere. In the meantime, Ryu would be completely enamored with Nezuko. To see this sibling bond, the way she would go to protect Tanjiro, he knew that he wanted this for himself. And so, he would decide that he wanted an upgrade. He would turn back to his sister and would slice her head off instantly. Before turning back, he would tell Tanjiro that he would give him an offer, that if he gave Nezuko to him, then he would allow him to live, and he could leave. However, Tanjiro, bellowing his voice with Venom's help, would make it very clear that he was not going to let his sister be taken, and that no matter what, they were going to leave here together. Ryu, in the meantime, would reveal that this fight was not going to go the way that he thought. As he lifted his hair and revealed one of the pupils of his eyes, Tanjiro could see a number inscribed in it. He would reveal that he were indeed one of the 12 Kizuki members, and that he had never been defeated, and that anyone who had been entangled in his webs would suffer the consequences. Instantly, he would use his webbing to snatch up Nezuko in midair, as the threads began to cut into her as punishment. Nezuko would slowly start to fall asleep in order to recover from the wounds. Tanjiro would become enraged. Venom would don back his Venom-Oni form over Tanjiro once again, but warned him that they wouldn't use the double critical anymore. If they did, his whole innards might completely explode. Tanjiro understood this, and focusing on his breathing as best he could, he would use total concentration, water breathing, 10th form, constant flux, charging straight at Ryu. He would swing his sword, slicing through and slashing at the threads. Ryu enhanced the strength of them, but it proved to be absolutely worthless. He used his blood demon arts, cutting thread cage, attempting to bind in and keep Tanjiro enclosed. However, the symbiote acted as a shield, allowing for Tanjiro to break free and press forward in his attack. In the midst of the fight, Tanjiro would experience his own fears. His fear of dying, his fear of letting Nezuko down. And in these moments of terror, he remembered his father. He remembered how his father was once frail, very sickly and tired, but how he always seemed to persevere. He remembered one time in particular. It was during the New Year's. Even though his father was very sickly and probably should have stayed in bed, he got on to perform the dance of Kagura, the dance as a prayer to the fire god to ward off injury, as their family worked with fire. Tanjiro wondered how his father could dance in the snow, and his father would tell him that he was using a special breathing technique, a technique that would allow him to dance forever. Tanjiro, in that moment, would close his eyes. Venom wondered what stance he was getting in. He didn't recognize it from any of his other fighting forms. But this form wasn't necessarily one for swordplay, but something that could be used. Tanjiro would take a deep breath, feeling his lungs, the fire burning within them. Instead of using that pain as a hindrance, he used it as a strength. He told Venom to keep him covered, and that he was going to take care of this in one slash. In doing so, he would use the footsteps of his father's dance, the Hinokami Kagura dance, slashing away at the threads, moving with the rage and the strength of a burning inferno. He would continue on in his strikes, moving with the intent to kill Ryu, despite knowing that Ryu's threads could potentially take him out as well. However, Nezuko would intervene at the last moment. Even while suspended, she would use her own form of the blood demon arts, exploding blood, causing the blood-like web threads to ignite into flame, severing the webs before they could attack Tanjiro. Tanjiro would bellow out proudly that the bond between he and Nezuko would never be severed, and using Venom as his aid, he would enhance his strength, going in for the final strike, believing that he had sliced off Ryu's head. As Tanjiro would land back on the ground, he would move towards Nezuko. Every step was excruciatingly painful. Venom warned him that he needed to stop and rest, and that he could move his body for him, but he warned that it was still going to hurt. However, the two would stop in that moment as they turned back around. Normally, when the demon was killed, there would be the smell of ash, but there was only the smell of blood. As they turned, they would see Ryu standing, as he would put his head back on. He would tell Tanjiro that he cut his neck with one of his own threads when he realized he was about to be decapitated by the Nichirin blade, which could have killed him. And now completely enraged, he would attempt to encase Tanjiro in his blood demon art, murderous eye basket, to slice and cut him to shreds. However, before he could, Venom would unleash his own Venom symbiote webbing, binding and holding back at the blood demon webs, doing his best to protect Tanjiro, whose body was completely beaten up on the inside. Of course, Venom could take over and technically move Tanjiro just fine, but he understood that with every movement that they made, it hurt Tanjiro on the inside. Of course, he'd be fine, but his partner would suffer more damage, and the last thing he wanted was for his host to be killed in the process. He felt as though he were stuck in a no-win situation. Sure, he could continue the fight, but Tanjiro would be hurt in the process. Although thankfully, he wouldn't have to worry for too long, as Giyu would arrive instantly. Freeing him from the blood demon arts, he would congratulate Tanjiro for surviving and lasting as long as he did, and for holding out until he had arrived. Venom would bring him up to speed on the situation, and Giyu would tell Venom to keep Tanjiro and Nezuko safe, telling them to stay put and to not move him too much. Once doing so, Venom would move over towards where Nezuko was, the brother and sister duo sitting beside one another. Venom would retract himself back inside of Tanjiro, keeping himself hidden in case anything were to happen. Meanwhile, an angered and enraged Ryu would unleash his most powerful attack, Blood Demon Art, Cutting Thread Rotation. However, Giyu would effortlessly repel him, using a water-breathing form that Venom nor Tanjiro knew. Water-breathing 11th form, Dead Calm. And he would easily behead the demon. In the meantime, the daughter demon had awoken and would attempt to run away, trying to flee from the demon slayers. However, before she could do so, before she had a chance to escape, she would be stopped, as she would have been nicked by another sword. A sword that was a lot different from most. The sword was used by the daughter, a sword that contained a unique poison to demons, one that came from insect breathing, butterfly dance, caprice, allowing for the demon to slowly fade and die in peace, so that it wouldn't suffer. Tanjiro in the meantime would awaken to see Nezuko beside him. He was happy to see that his sister was safe. He would see as Ryu died. He could see that even on his face as well, there was pain and regret. It seemed as though every time he fought the demons, there seemed to be more to them than met the eye. More than anyone would have expected. The demons weren't as cold and as heartless as people made them out to be. In the end, they were also tragic stories in their own right. However, the brother and sister reunion would be short-lived, as Venom could sense another presence quickly approaching. Giyu could also sense it as well, but he knew who it was. It was Shinobu, as well as her young ward, Kano, The two had arrived and congratulated them on a job well done, but they missed the demon, the young girl sitting beside the Demon Slayer boy over there. Kano quickly went to take care of the young girl, and Nezuko attempted to run away. Tanjiro, in the meanwhile, knew that he had to protect her, and Venom would help him get back on his feet, although it hurt for him to do so. Venom would warn him that it would be reckless for him to continue on like this, but Tanjiro yelled that he didn't care, and that Venom had to do whatever he needed to. Once he got the clearance, well, that was all he needed to hear. Venom would quickly coat Tanjiro's inner body with the symbiote, and once he did so, they were off to the races. Kano attempted to stop Tanjiro, but Tanjiro was quickly able to disarm her. He used the symbiote-like webbing that Venom had decided to adapt for himself, snatching her sword away from her instantly, before shooting and tying her to the tree. In the meantime, Giyu had managed to capture Shinobu, who kindly warned him that he was acting against Corp's rules. However, as the free-for-all fight was continuing in the forest, it was quickly brought to an end as the Kusugi Crow would arrive, telling everyone that Tanjiro and Nezuko were to be taken into custody and brought back to headquarters. And in doing so, everyone put their swords away. Inosuke was quickly found and unsheathed, although he was pretty upset that he had gotten beaten so easily the way that he did, and reflecting upon things, he didn't really take out the father demon. That was more so Tanjiro, and well, he just provided a few quick hits. Zenitsu and the other victims of the elder son spider demon, well, they were taken in for treatment as well, as a cleanup unit would arrive to help take any of the injured and any of the fallen back to various headquarters and mansions to receive any help that was necessary. Tanjiro would find himself surrounded along with Nezuko, the two of them unsure of what to do. Giyu would tell them that everything would be fine, but they needed to not fight. Tanjiro would tell Venom to retreat back into himself. Venom wasn't sure about this, but Tanjiro promised him that everything would be fine. Although telepathically, Venom would promise Tanjiro one thing. If they tried anything on him or Nezuko, and Tanjiro wasn't awake to defend himself, then Venom would do what was necessary. Tanjiro thanked him, as Venom would quietly retreat back into himself. Once Tanjiro was completely on his own, with no symbiote to help him stand, he fell to his knees quickly and passed out. Later on, he would find himself awakening. As he did so, he would see that he had been tied up, not just with rope, but that there were iron cuffs on his hands. As he looked around, he would see that he was before the Hashira, the lead swordsman of the Demon Slayer Corps. This concludes What If Tanjiro Had Venom? Demon Slayer Dark Fury, Part 5. As always, if you enjoyed today's video, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that is to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we will wrap up One Piece Rangers of the Sea Battle at Enies Lobby Part 3. But without further ado, that's going to do it for today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.